Modern Railways. In-depth railway news.
Hello and welcome to the preview of Modern Railways October 2022 edition. As you can see from the cover, East Midlands Railway feature this month. I must admit it's been a while since I've seen one that clean. Still, there we go. Let's go straight over to the editor, Philip Sherratt, to tell us all about it. Philip.
Thanks, Ian, and hello everyone. Well, what strange and interesting times we live in. I'm recording this during the period of national mourning following the sad news about the death of Her Majesty the Queen. And it's having a profound impact on all aspects of our lives, but the railways are really pulling out all the stops as I speak at the moment, with some overnight services, extra staffing, stations running 24/7, so a really great effort for us to report on. But in terms of what that means for our October issue, well, it's mostly business as usual because the railway keeps going and so must we, and there's plenty for us to report on. It feels quite fitting that in this issue we are reporting on the date for through running of Elizabeth Line services across London. That's linking up the east and west sides with the central section, which opened in May. That'll take place in November. But we report on that and also some upgrades on the stations. So, and it's fantastic that Her Majesty the Queen attended the official opening of the Elizabeth Line just a week before it opened back in May. So that's a really memorable moment and really highlights, I think, she was clearly determined to do that, and that's a great accolade for the railway. But in terms of the October issue of Modern Railways then, I've come down to the railway line side because we are talking about my local patch, the East Midlands. And there's always a lot going on here. At the moment, it's a complicated rolling stock cascade plan which EMR are doing, so we have a bit of an update from them about passenger trends, revenue, which routes are recovering more strongly, some stuff about work to improve performance, and of course those rolling stock changes, the cascade in the regional fleet, and of course we're awaiting the Aurora bi-mode fleet for the intercity services to London. As part of that work, I had a trip down to Eastcroft Depot, which is just the other side of Nottingham Station from where I am, and had a look around some of the upgrades they've done there, so you'll be able to read about that as well. And we've also got a feature about Network Rail's aspect from the East Midlands point of view. So one of the initiatives that they've been running recently is called the First 50 Miles, which is focusing on the south end of the Midland Main Line from Bedford into London and the very north bit of the Thameslink core, looking at improving the reliability of the infrastructure and making the railway run better. So you can read about that work that's been done too. We also have a real Midlands flavour to this because the West Midlands Trains also plays a central role. We have a free map, which is an extract from the recently published West Midlands Rail Atlas from Cressy, so you'll get that as a bonus with this issue. But we also look extensively at the December 2022 timetable change. So this is a big change for the West Coast Main Line and for services across the West Midlands train services both into Euston and around the West Midlands conurbation. We're focusing on the West Midlands aspect of it, so that's the West Midlands train side of things. There's significant changes for services out of Euston, but also around the West Midlands area. And you can read about how that's been developed. There's been a real cross-industry effort to get a successful outcome which works for everyone there. And connected with that, we also have a little bit of a historic look back at how railway links across the West Coast Main Line at Nuneaton have developed, which is quite an interesting story. My colleague Andy Roden is southwest based, and he's been shining the spotlight on Devon this time. We've spoken to Councillor Andrea Davis, who's a well-known figure on Devon County Council, about the county's vision for rail and for integrated transport, which is clearly a key theme there, bringing bus and rail together. So I hope you'll enjoy that, a little flavour of the southwest. And we have the latest of Roger Ford's retrospective articles, looking back this time to the 2000s. It's a penultimate article, a year in which probably, I suppose you might say, the wheels came off privatisation in some ways, and it was a decade of some turmoil, but ended with some optimism. I already mentioned the free pull-out map in the centre of the magazine, which I do hope you'll enjoy. I've already mentioned the Elizabeth Line. Other news stories though, there was a very excellent event at the end of August paying tribute to Chiltern Railways founder Adrian Shooter, and you can read our reports on that. It was great to have a statue of Adrian unveiled at Marylebone, and the first turbo style train that he ordered, 168001, his favourite train as he calls it, was named after him. That's a fantastic tribute, and it was great to attend that event and report on it. And another issue pertinent to London is Transport for London funding, where a funding deal has been agreed. So that forms a key part of our news reporting, amongst other things as well. So these are very interesting times for the railway, and we look forward to lots going ahead in the autumn. We're preparing for our anniversary rail tour with Cross Country, which will be happening just before the end of September, as well as other events. But that's it from me. I'll leave you with a passing turbo star, and I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you, Philip. Talking about Anniversary Rail Tour, my bit will be about HSTs on cross country. But before we do that, let's hear from Roger, who's been taking a look at how Network Rail responded to the heatwave. Roger.
Hello there again. This month's column deals with the highly topical subject, to start with, of the heatwave in July. This brought new record temperatures and caused disruption on the railway, including closure of the East Coast Main Line because of concerns over the continuously welded rail buckling. Now, this is a well-known subject. British Rail installed the first CWR, continuously welded rail, back in 1958. And so to start this month's column, while I look at the theory and practice of CWR, how it works, and how you manage it, and the various issues were occurring both with very hot and very cold weather. It's a bit technical, but I hope it's written in layman's terms. After the disruption, Network Rail's reaction was to form a task force. And I'm not sure whether that was a knee-jerk reaction to show that something was being done, or indeed reflected a lack of confidence in the civil engineer's ability to maintain and operate CWR. Anyway, I look at the personnel in the task force and look at their relevant experience and background. From there, I move on to another topical subject, and that is the ex-BR fleets. Spent a lot of time in the last couple of years dealing with the new fleets coming into service, their performance, delivery, and so on. But what about the ex-BR fleets? Well, at privatisation, the Roscoes acquired around 11,000 vehicles. And going through the fleets today, about 30% of those are still in service, and a lot of them are diesels. And another odd idea is that you've seen a lot of them going to scrap, but we've been scrapping EMUs, when of course electrification is the way forward, and keeping DMUs. So I look at the various fleets, and of course in Scotland they actually have a policy, a programme for replacing their diesel traction, but south of the border we're not so hot. I look at southeastern, where they've got the problem of the ageing networkers. As they told Modern Railways in our southeastern issue a few months back, they're working up a plan, and details may be available soon. But of course Northern's got lots of DMUs, and there's no plans to replace them. So that's an interesting topic where the way forward is unclear, and of course it's made even more difficult by the fact that it's hard to organise a national cascades of rolling stock as older stock goes. So that's the column for this month. Oh yes, there's one more thing. I keep finding holes in the William Shapps plan of ideas that of issues that no one had thought of, and the latest one is that the Rail Delivery Group ran a number of forums of where people from the industry could get together and discuss issues. Then some of those are going straight into Great British Railways, we think, but some aren't. And a new body was being spun off from Rail Delivery Group called Rail Partners. Now that's an advocacy lobby for the private sector. But they've also set up another division which is going to provide forums for technical and operational issues these councils, as they used to be called, will be run, and DfT is funding them. So that's something I've looked at, because why was DfT funding rail partners? Well, it's doing it so that parts of the industry can get together and talk about current issues and improve practice. So that's all for this month, mainly focusing on rail, but also we've got this topical issue, of course, of what on earth we're going to do about replacing the XPR stock. So that's all. See you next month.
Thank you, Roger. Now, as I mentioned, my Pan Up is based on 40 years of HSTs on cross-country. I had a trip down to Plymouth for a look around Lara Depot in the company of a couple of cross-country managers. A long trip from Derby, but in an HST, not a bad one at all. I'll take a look at the long process of trying to get HSTs for cross-country routes, and then the attempt to replace them with Voyagers, which didn't quite work out as expected. At the last franchise change, the DfT went for the Arriva bid using some refurbished HSTs instead of building more Voyagers, thus proving they get some things right, although it was a cheaper option. Once the C6 overhaul is complete on the HSTs, we can look forward to more HST diagrams, and who knows what might happen in the future. Well, I don't, but I do offer some suggestions, as you might expect, really. So that's it for this preview. I'll see you next time. Bye all.
Visit www.modernrailways.com for more interesting and essential information about the British Railway Network.